Hi, everyone. So welcome to Empowering Chats. We are at the beginning of 2025, if you will, and we've already had some interesting days. Let me just put it that way. And so I am excited to have this conversation today with a man who has been doing work for peace with an organization called Pathways to Peace, and he works with the UN and all sorts of other things I can't wait to find out. I want to welcome David Wick. David, thanks for joining me.
Well, thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here with you, and particularly as we are in a major evolution on many levels and many ways. So we'll I'm happy to share what I can.
Yeah, so I have a question. So I want us to discuss what Pathways to Peace is, because your organization has been around for a very long time, and you have tools and things to teach people, but also ways that people can serve. But what I want to know your personal story, a little piece of it. What brought you to this kind of work? And then how long have you been doing it? And then the last question out of that, David, you can answer in any order, is what helps you to get up every morning and recommit to building a world that is of peace?
Well, well, thank you for the invitation. And I would say um, throughout my life and when I was a kid, well, again, my spiritual background, my family, I was born in Duluth, Minnesota, and my dad was always an organist at the church, at the Lutheran church, and then moved on to moved to San Francisco when I was 7 years old, and still, involved with the church. And then from there to an Episcopalian church. But there's always been, in part of our life has been the church world. But I've also just been in a state of, what's going on? What's this world about? Why are we here? What's happening? And when I was a kid, I always felt I had a pretty close relationship with Jesus, and just kind of like talk to Jesus, and just kind of like and Jesus was there. When I got into my early 20s, I think about 20 years old, I really came into a profound what's going on, why the world, why life. And I asked to talk with a young Episcopalian priest, and he was a young guy, and we got together, and through a whole experience there, I had quite a profound, I would say, spiritual awakening
Mm,
to the grander vision of the world, of what the evolution. And there are many teachers, masters,
yeah,
spiritual masters and teachers that have come, the great ones begin, and the people create the religions. They don't create a religion. They create a practice. It's all the same. It's about waking
right.
up. It's how we live our lives in love and compassion. um, but it really was a profound opening to a greater understanding of the universe, and the practices of meditation, the practices of going in. There's a tuning to who and what we are. And my overall view of life has become it is learning. We're in a constant learning process, and we're in the school of hard knocks. The physical world is the physical world, and it's we do the best that we can, but it's a big learning process. In my also experience and understanding, this is not a one-shot deal.
Yep.
We don't make it in this life. You do it or you don't. It takes time, a number of lifetimes to continue to learn and grow. And but the overall kind of like the bigger picture that I came to was, well, since I'm here, I'm in my own spiritual journey, doing my greater, lesser journey. Um, what can I do? How can I be of service to assist the best that I can, and to assist in the evolution of the consciousness that
Mm,
we're all going through, and which is the constant process socially and in the world, but also personally. But it all begins, when we're talking about peace and peace building, it all begins right here.
yes, within.
That's absolutely, that's where it begins. Um, because without internal peace, you can't create external peace. It just doesn't work.
So
Um,
David, how do you maintain internal peace? Because well, the last many years, right? Okay, there's probably entire humanity's lifetimes has been contentious, and but especially 2024 was. And how do you maintain your inner peace? Because I personally find that daunting at times.
Certainly, certainly. Well, I think there are two things that work for me. Um, One is I have a meditation practice and
Mhm.
a spiritual master that I found when I had that epiphany. And then there's the meditation practice, which, and then meditation is also stress reduction. It
Yeah,
also
yeah.
is, I know I have friends, dear friends, who work with heart math which is about the intelligence of the heart and opening the heart, the intelligence of the heart, helping the mind to learn.
Mhm.
So just from that standpoint, but also having the bigger picture that the big picture is we're on evolution, and what's happening today, things will happen, or this year, or these 4 years, and we'll go through it, and I will keep on the path of providing, the best I can in terms of love, peace, compassion, unity, because that's the truth of it, and it's is the mind the issue of how we get ourselves into trouble. And again, the physical world is tough because it is duality, and there's always going to be conflict, but it's how we deal with the conflict is really the issue. One of the things that I think is always important is we go back to the Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, who said, "You're not a human being in search of a spiritual experience. You are a spiritual being immersed in a human experience." And so
And so
that,
many people don't even realize it, or if they have, they've forgotten it, or they minimize it because the physical reality of, or seeming reality of the matter, the world seems more real to them. And so you forget, people forget.
for example, yesterday I was listening to a recording, a program by the astronaut Edgar Mitchell.
Hmm.
And Edgar Mitchell, went to he was one that went to the moon, and on the way back he had a profound awakening, profound epiphany.
Yep.
And he started the Institute of Noetic Sciences. And a good colleague of mine, Willis Harmon, was the president of Institute of Noetic Sciences, which is in the San Francisco Bay Area mainly, but it's international. And he was talking about how it is shown that the Newtonian understanding of a mechanistic world, it is not true. It is not true at all. So to physicists right now, it is unified. There
Hmm.
is, everything is unified. Our consciousness, we are in consciousness. It's not we have individual consciousness, but we are in consciousness.
Yeah.
And this is shown time and again in the physics and scientifically. And also have a colleague, her name is Jude Currivan, Currivan, who's done, she's a great physicist and cosmologist and has
Yes.
deep understanding of the unity of the universe and of all of us. So it's not like we are separate entities. We are unified. We are of the same essence, and it's shown. But people at large, it is hard because we look at physical things, they're separate. But the reality is, go deeper than that. We're unified. So and the spiritual masters and the depths have been telling us that for years, thousands of years.
Eons, yes,
Yeah, yeah.
yes.
And as
Which
you
is
well know, and I'm sure you could even say more than that about how we are unified.
absolutely. So this is what's fascinating as I'm watching what's happening in America
Yeah,
uh, right now, and you and I are speaking the day after the inauguration. And it's fascinating to me to see, because we are all unified, because we are all what I call individual sparks of the divine. We're all particles. Uh, uh, Greg Braden was calling it God particles. We're all connected because we're all part of what you were saying in consciousness. We are all in consciousness. So it's fascinating to see people that are really on a destructive pathway, as opposed to a pathway that brings more humility and more connection and more peace. And that does speak to the duality you mentioned earlier, David, but this just what's occurring right now. I have people, myself included, that we're asking each other, how do we stay focused on the highest good for all? How do we stay focused and grounded in love? How do we have faith that this is working out for the highest good of all? How do we do that,
right.
David? Please tell me. I really want to
Well,
know.
well, well, I would say just as we mentioned before, we have what is our individual practice that helps us keep centered, that helps us keep grounded, that help us keep focused in our hearts, no matter what. I'm working with a woman named Barbara Leger. She
Oh,
is working with, and has been for about 20 years, working with school teachers and children and students in Ukraine, and how they are, and she's been working with them, and how they can help continue to have resilience because they are going daily. They're having to run to bomb shelters and they
God.
can't sleep at night, and I mean, it's horrific. And, but the teachers are amazing. The kids keep them up and keep them focused on peace, keep them focused. And there are different activities and things to help that happen. But they're
Hmm.
doing it, but it's tough. It's really, really tough. But it's what are the practices? There are things we can do to keep ourselves, in our hearts and also connected. It's also connection with groups or other people that help enforce, that kind of consciousness, that kind of being in our hearts. And sure, there's stuff. I mean, there's things I see and just like, oh my God, I can't believe that. But it also is keeping in mind there's a bigger picture. There's a bigger evolution that we're all part of. And they knew that in the late, 60s and 70s, that
Yes.
our path is not sustainable. How the world, how we're functioning, how we're set up, our systems, our, business, etc., is not sustainable. And, it's going to come apart. And, there is an evolution of consciousness, greater consciousness that is happening, right now. There's so many different, examples of that, and people who are really part of that. You're part of that. We're part of that. The evolution. We don't know how long the evolution takes, but that's the thing. So it's like, okay, whatever's going to happen, and also it's calling things out, is stepping up and saying, no, that's not okay. Calling it,
Right.
calling it out for what it
And
is.
not being afraid. This is what I think the crux is. Or one of the pieces of the crux is that we were witnessing for the last 10 years maybe, is people developing fear of losing their position of power, or if they don't do what the bully says, they're
That's
gonna
right.
come and get me, or so well, if I just ignore it, the bully will go away, and I'm
Right.
talking globally, not just in America, but
Yeah.
and it's come to that place. I was working with some of my light leaders yesterday, recognizing, and I'm the same way. I'm like, okay, can I just not have to do that? I don't want to face that.
Right.
Do I have to really look at that? And it's hard to then stand up and speak truth to people we think are quote unquote in power. And the speaking truth is to say, hey, that's not okay.
Right.
And to continue to stand up and say, hey, that's not okay.
Mhm. Right. And there's also a way of saying that. How do you say that in a way that is still acknowledging them as human beings, or their,
Okay, David, how would
ability?
I say that? Because there's part of me that doesn't want to, I think many people are like, I don't want to see that you're actually a human being because it makes it easier to vilify you.
Sure. And that's what wars are started on.
Yep,
It started on creating the other.
yep,
And someone, there's those guys, it's those people that are bad people, the evil people. That's part of the propaganda. It's a mindset. It's all about the mind.
yeah,
And how that is. So we do that ourselves. We create other. I mean, I have my own biases around people and so like, and there's a program I'm also involved in, called Peace on Earth by 2030 by a gentleman named David Gershon, which is very powerful.
uh-huh,
And there are processes that we go through. It's called the peace game, and this is very interesting. You go to peace2030.earth, peace2030.earth, and the peace game is a 9-week program, but it's like an exercise. It's like we go to the gym and exercise to stay healthy and strong and so on. Well, we have the program where you go through 7 different areas of focus that are exercising what we do daily, including empowerment, oneness, unity, cooperation, abundance, love, faith. But it's doing that with other people. We're in a team of 3, and you're doing the practices of that. So in that, one of the practices is embracing the other, is the people that we don't want to talk with.
mm-hmm.
But how do we do that? Reaching across. Now, I think there's also my belief is, and my experience is, there are people who have different levels of consciousness.
You're right.
Different, you know, and this is very simplistic, but it's kind of like, you go into school. There are people who are in 3rd grade, and there are people who are in 12th grade. There are people in PhD, but in the evolution of growing and learning, you get to a greater consciousness, a greater understanding. Basically, I think there's some aspect of that in our humanity. People
Yeah,
are in different spaces of understanding. So let me just share with you um, the importance of thinking, and how what we think. The old expression, as you think, so you become.
yes,
That's an old spiritual knowledge and expression. And but I'd say most often we don't think a whole lot about that, but it's true.
mm-hmm.
It's absolutely true. So this is from the preamble of UNESCO, of the United Nations, UNESCO. And UNESCO is the UN Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. And the
Mm-hmm.
preamble of it says, since wars begin in the minds of men and women, it is in the minds of men that the defenses of peace must be constructed.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
It's in our minds.
Yeah,
It's what we believe until we see things differently. So then, again, you come back to our spiritual selves, the importance of our practices, the importance of holding high the higher values, the higher practices, you know, no matter what. I mean, you certainly hear stories of survivors of the Nazi death camps, and those what held them, how they lived through that
Mm-hmm.
by being able to hold their faith, hold living in their higher value, living in love, even
Yes.
in that horrific situation. So that's a huge part of it. So but we are in this major evolution. So I'll just share with you another quote. Again, this is Willis Harman, who is the president of Institute of Noetic Sciences. He's a very
Mm-hmm.
close friend. He also was a professor at Stanford University. He's a visionary, and he said, and this is so true, that we are living through one of the most fundamental shifts in history, a change in the actual belief structure of Western society. No economic, political, or military power can be compared with the power of a change of mind. By deliberately changing their images of reality, people are changing the world.
Yes. And okay, so that presents me with hope that individuals can begin to envision peace for within themselves and begin to see it in the outer world, like visioning it out, envisioning it out. And there's also people that see that they're envisioning fear and they're visioning that out. You know, my brother's got a pack and go with everything, including an armament, because, you know, Armageddon's coming in his mind or whatever he thinks. I don't know. But it's fascinating because it is about as you think you do become. So if you're envisioning peace and you're doing the practice you're recommending, David, of going to peace within yourself daily, then you will be radiating that out. You will be putting out the building blocks of conscious um, peace building, peacemaking. But if you're sitting in a puddle of fear constantly and then anger because you're sitting in that puddle of fear that hello we make ourselves. I mean, just you just have to think about a little baby sitting in their puddle.
Right.
So, you know, if you're doing that constant fear projection, then of course what you're going to see outside and hear when you turn on your devices is, you know, the boogeyman's coming to get you. And
Right.
then we see the wars around the world and you go, yes, see that. So it is up to us individually and then joining collectively in groups like you're sharing with us to be the cornerstones of peace
Mhm.
constantly.
Yeah, that's right, and it's tough. No question. It's tough, and again, the world is tough, and there are people and entities that are intentionally
Yeah,
manipulating
yeah,
the mindset,
yeah.
intentionally, creating division and destruction, and for whatever their purposes are, and that's part of the challenge of the world. And again, you be able to step back and see and believe that in the bigger picture, this is part of the grander evolution. Um, and so we do the best that we can while we're here.
So, you know, David, I might start crying. Just don't mind me if I do. Um, oh man, when the day of the inauguration, which as we're talking, it was yesterday, and I said to my husband, I said, I don't know what I'm going to do. And my husband said, you're going to love him. And I burst into tears because fundamentally in my gut, that doesn't that doesn't come naturally for me to, and I'm just talking about me, everybody. You guys all may be different, but I'm just talking about me. And I think that what's going on with me might be going on with you, but it's a challenge to love the perpetrator, to love the aggressor, in to love them. And so what my current spiritual practices is to how to get into my mindset to see that individual or individuals or countries as to find the places where I can see that there is light and therefore infuse love. You see what I'm saying, David?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
really hard.
Oh, for sure. It's really tough, for sure. And the reality is every person is of our essence. We all come from the same essence. We all come from the same, if you want, God, source, whatever language you want to use, and we all come from there.
Yes.
And whatever the journey is, again, the conscious evolution of us as individuals, we are where we're at, and we're, again, the physical world is driven by mind. Um, so it's tough, but but fundamentally, we're from the same place, we're the same essence.
Yes.
But
Yes.
is yeah.
And then what I'm hearing is you're saying that is because we are from the same essence, source energy. Um, the condemnation that people are leveling at each other, the judgment, the condemnation, the criticism, the anger, the hatred is really something that boomerangs back. Because
Oh,
if we're all of the same essence and we're
sure,
all one, then really who are we criticizing and condemning? We're ourselves.
sure, yeah, and well, just fundamentally, just go back to what Jesus taught. I mean, all the spiritual, masters and teachers. But what did Jesus tell? Constantly love your neighbor, love your enemy, love your. I mean, through that is the more powerful energy. That is a more powerful consciousness than
Yes.
hate.
Yes, and I think I personally believe, David, that the stepping stone to that is by doing a spiritual practice and learning how to love ourselves first. Because if we can love
Yeah.
ourselves first and release the judgment, criticism, shame, blame, fear, whatever, out of our own um, essence, if you will, then it infuses. I just really believe in frequency and rate, and it radiates
Oh,
out.
absolutely.
So then it makes it a little bit easier for the ones that aren't loving themselves and therefore brutalizing others to maybe, if you will, get a hit on that inner love that I'm developing or you're developing, or and collectively we can develop. So
Yeah, absolutely.
so I want to ask you about pathways to peace, because
Yeah.
on your website, well, you have a mission statement, which is like, I'm like, yeah, that's a no-brainer, makes sense to me. And what's happening in America is a divergence from all those values that are on your website. But there's opportunities for people to serve through pathways for peace, right?
Well, yes, and I can just give a little background on it. So I've been with Pathways to Peace since 1980, and when it was formed as a nonprofit organization, but it
Mm-hmm.
was deeply involved, particularly through from the co-founder Ava Madison. She was involved working with the UN and before 1980, and she and Pathways were influential in the construction and passage of the International Day of Peace, which was
Mm-hmm.
in 1981, which was passed by resolution at the UN,
Yeah.
and that was supposed to be for all humanity, throughout the world. And in '82, they just had a moment of silence in the General Assembly, and that was it. And we're going, whoa, that's not the deal. And so in 1983, we had Pathways to Peace, worked for a year to plan for the major International Day of Peace, which is in San Francisco in 1984, in September. September 21st is the International Day of Peace now, throughout the world. And so we had a very big event in San Francisco in 1984. And we just had the 40th anniversary of
Mm.
that in San Francisco this last year in 2024, September 21. But it has evolved from a few hundred thousand people in San Francisco, just is now hundreds of millions.
I
And
love
people
that.
say a billion or more people that are aware of and engage in the International Day of Peace, taking the moment, taking the time to be conscious of. There's so many different activities and events and on the International Day of Peace, but the in '83 with Pathways to Peace, we started was at noontime in every time zone to take a moment of silence, a moment of peace, and that has become known as the peace wave. And so every September, 21, to around the world is, it's a kind of like a peace wave, taking a moment of silence at 12 noon. And the encouragement is, and many people do this every day at 12 noon, just take a moment, just take 5 seconds, and just be quiet. Just stop for a moment and just think of peace or what am I, just taking a moment just to get into our hearts
Love
and,
it.
and every day at 12 noon. And that's the energetic, and that's
Yes.
growing. And actually, there are like heart math has a way of measuring energetic. It's called the coherence
Mm-hmm.
around the world. And when things happen, people attune to, compassion or their hearts, it changes the energy in the world. I mean, it literally does. And with Edgar Mitchell and the other physicists and so on, they're saying that what exists is wave and frequency.
Yes.
That's it. There's no hard matter. Even when you get down to the atoms and the molecules, it's not hard matter. It's
Mm-hmm.
energetic. It's
Mm-hmm.
everything is energy.
Mm-hmm.
So we influence, we have impact on that energy, as you were saying earlier. But it's becoming aware of like, yeah, it's a real deal.
You know what? I so appreciate you bringing that up because years ago, and I didn't connect it, but I did do the September 21st piece. I participated for several years doing that, and then I got away from it for some reason. But I'm going to do this daily at 12
Yeah,
noon,
yeah.
to see how it shifts my consciousness because right now there's, calling peace into my body. Okay, first of all, everybody, you don't have to call peace into your body because peace already exists within each of us because we are particles of the
We
divine.
are that. We
So
are it.
exactly, we are peace. So, it's not something outside of us, but now I digress. So doing a 12 o'clock noon, remembering that I am peace, I am that peace is brilliant, David. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, absolutely, for sure. And it's tough situation. It's tough in the world. This year, I'll tell you a bit more about the pathways and background. But this year, we are launching what we in exploration and stepping into badass peace building.
Ooh, okay. And and what is that
And
going to look like?
we'll find out. We're bringing people and organizations together and really to explore that, but it's really standing strong in what love is, standing strong in what the compassion and peace is, not being apologetic, not being, it's just like, no, this is real deal. This is, and it's also moving from theory to action,
Love it.
and not just a theory. Um, Looking at systemic injustice at the root cause of injustice is part of that. Being bold in our actions, but it's also local, global. What we
Right,
do
local to
locally,
global.
what we do locally impacts globally. And that's a whole area that we're very involved in with the United Nations, and we manifesting the culture of peace.
Love it.
And there's a whole approach around that. So in 1999, the passage of the Declaration and Program of Action of the Culture of Peace at the UN, and which is fundamentally a culture of peace is a set of values, attitudes, traditions, and modes of behavior and ways of life. It's all things. It's
Yes.
all things that we live in our lives, that we have in our communities, because everything is created by agreement. Everything starts as a thought and is created by agreement. So the culture of peace is, what do we want our lives to look like? What do we want our communities to look like? So doing local work impacts globally. So I'm in Ashland, Oregon, and my partner and I, Irene Kai, we helped to uh, give, with the inspiration of the Culture Peace at the UN, helped to manifest in 2019 the Ashland Culture of Peace Commission,
Uh-huh.
and how to bring into a community the awareness of a culture of peace. What is that? What does it look like? What are the choices we want to make, for that? And the culture piece from the UN, it has 8 action areas as kind of pillars to work with. I'll just briefly say: fostering a culture of peace through education, promoting sustainable economic and social development, promoting respect for all human rights, ensure equality between women and men, um, foster democratic participation, advance understanding, tolerance, and solidarity, support participatory communication and free flow of information, and promoting peace and security. So those are the pillars of it. But fundamentally, it's really all things. What do we want our lives to look like? What do we want
Hmm.
in our community? We worked with our police department. They have decals on the cars now called peace officers,
Nice.
working with the city council, etc. So it's really local, global, and it makes a difference. There are many people that have been, aware of what happened in Ashland, who are doing things in their own community. So it spreads, it moves.
I love that. And so, if somebody wanted to start this peace culture, in their local community, how would they go about doing that? Is there something on the, Pathways to Peace website to get them started?
Well, there is the culture piece page that we have there, but if someone's interested, I can certainly, help them steer people in the right direction of that. So I give you my email address if you want to.
Okay, yeah, well, if you want to put, I'm gonna put some of this stuff in the show notes, like your organization and a
Yeah.
few other things, heart math and things like that. So, if you want if you want your email to go out to a lot of people, I don't know.
Well, I have a
Okay,
organizational email.
great.
Yeah, we
Okay,
can
then
do that.
yes, and that way people can reach out to you
Yeah,
and find out how they start it, locally at
sure,
the local
sure.
level. Um,
Yeah, yeah. And there are many initiatives that are taking place. For example, with the um, Peace on Earth by 2030, I mentioned earlier with
yeah.
David Gershwin, that, from that experience, 3 of us who are Rotarian, so we brought this into Rotary, and this is growing significantly within Rotary and Rotary International. The whole focus on a peace on Earth by 2030. And from that, we have started an initiative, which is the Oregon Peace Trail. It's a new um, Rotary Oregon Peace Trail. And it's connecting all the Rotary clubs who are going to focus on their local communities between Portland and Ashland. Is the whole length of the state. And that is going to be a literal trail. And each community would be developing, this all the more. But anyhow, that's something that has grown out of this, peace game. So it's those types of things that just evolve and grow.
I love that. I have several friends in Rotary. I'm going to pass that on to them, that sounds like something that a couple of them would definitely be interested in doing.
Yeah, well, again, even just going to peace2030.earth, it's a big deal, kind of a very big deal within Rotary. And fundamentally, Rotary is about service and doing incredible service around the world, a genuine work. And it is a peace building organization. All of the service is really peace building.
I had no
Um,
idea. I did not know that about Rotary.
yeah.
Wow. See, I learned so much every day when I get to talk to people like you, David. Thank you.
Well, this is a delight. I'm just, enjoying this a lot. And also, it's important that we just share, how we evolved together at this time. And this is a major time in humanity,
Hmm.
in our lives. And I'll just share another message that came from David Adams, and he was one of the key people in the culture of peace in at the UN. Is the director of UNESCO, and he was saying he's deep into the real heart and soul of the culture of peace, what that is and what it is becoming. And he said, my experience and research have convinced me that the world is on the verge of the greatest change in human history. The transition from the culture of war to the that we've had for tens of thousands of years to a new culture of peace. That's the long arch. That's the bigger picture. But he
Yes.
sees that and knows that from deep research and deep understanding of what's happening in the world.
And many of us have been feeling that. And the idea of having peace by 2030, you guys, that's only 5 years away now. That's just 5 years. That's not a long time.
And the fundamental of that is that through the research and through deep, work, David Gershon and others have seen that is a tipping point. That if you get 49 million people around the world engaged with the peace game, engaged with with this work, and again with this consciousness, can make the change
Mhm.
uh, in the world.
David, that gives me that you've given me hope today, and not just a glimmer. I so appreciate that, but a big window to having more hope and faith in humanity, because because the last day or so it hasn't been that here for me, at least
Yeah,
in America.
understand.
So,
Understand. And to me, it's also how much attention do you give it?
mhm,
How
mhm.
much attention do you give to the news? I mean, I pay attention. I want to, want to be aware of what's going on, but I don't read in deep into the articles. I don't get into, it's just like, no, I'm not going to get into that soup.
Yeah, yeah,
I
I
have to be
agree.
aware. But
I agree. And also there's lots of, I have several friends after yesterday and all the executive orders that were being showered about. I have several people that are moving out of, depending on social media,
yeah,
on all the various platforms, because that's not promoting peace.
right.
It promotes divisiveness and things like that. So there's a huge wave you were talking about earlier. It's going to be a huge wave of peace and awareness, conscious awareness that we are, all of us are going to be feeling and hopefully resonating with. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, things have, standing because we, the people, give it standing. If
yeah,
we always say, not going to do that, no, turn away from it, it is greatly diminished.
exactly. It's exactly where we put our attention, that's where the energy goes. And so to
Yeah.
move the attention from what you're fearful of to what it is you really want. And I personally want a culture of peace. So I'm putting my attention on a culture of peace and love and compassion.
Yeah.
Hope everybody else does.
And when people say, well, I can't do anything about the war in Gaza or anything, it's like, you're right. Do what you can do in your life right now. Your relationship, our relationships, our community, that's where you can do something that makes a difference.
Yeah, thank you, David. David Wick, and the organization is Pathways to Peace. I'll have a bunch of stuff in the show notes for y'all. David, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for the work that you committed to so many years ago and that you're still committed to. You open windows of hope for so many, I'm sure. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. This is a pleasure to be here with you. Thank
Thank
you.
you. So I'm just going to end with, and so it is, namaste.
Namaste.